All right, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday Night Live. If you're still working your way in, go on and come on in, grab a seat. We're glad you are all here tonight with us. We've got a great interview ahead. Thank you, everybody that is joining us online, watching on Rumble and YouTube. Make sure you hit that share button and share it with your social media networks so everybody can join in with us. And we've got a great program tonight. But before we go too much further, would you join me in prayer? Heavenly Father, we're so grateful that we can be here tonight all together and coming together for a like-minded purpose to be able to hear a great interview and a great conversation. We ask that you bless it, and we pray that this would go far and wide, just equipping people with the kind of knowledge that is going to arm them to just help out, to be able to help us bring the right kind of mindset to a society that really needs it right now. Things are so backwards. And Lord, we just want to see things be made right in your honor and for your glory. So we just pray that this conversation will be a help in that process tonight. And we thank you for every single person that's here and watching online. And we ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so we are going to be taking an offering. So those of you that are here with us tonight, we're doing that. If you're writing out a check, please make it out to Our Watch with Tim Thompson. If you're watching online, you can go to ourwatchnow.com/donate. And we appreciate your support. So if you're willing and able to help out and partner with Our Watch, it helps us to be able to bring you interviews like this and other content and other ways that Our Watch gets involved. So thank you very much for your partnership in that. Want to let you know, make sure, stop by the school choice booth out there, find out about the school choice initiative and sign that petition. That's very important. And for our upcoming Our Watch Wednesday Night Lives, we're going to be off for the next couple weeks. So there will be no Wednesday Night Live next Wednesday, the 22nd. And there will be no Wednesday Night Live on Wednesday, the 29th. We will be back on Wednesday, January 5th. And our guest that night is going to be Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. Sounds like you guys are excited about that. We got a lot of things to be excited about. So if you haven't already, please like and follow on all the social media sites for Our Watch: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Rumble, of course. And we're going to be getting started here in just a moment. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Wednesday Night Live.
This past year, the radical left with their globalist mindset has burned down our cities, forced businesses to close, and tried to silence our churches. They told us to wear a mask and stay home to save lives, and many Christians remain silent. That is no longer an option. The silent majority will be silent no more, and the sleeping giant has been awakened. We are going to use our voice to take back the media, stop the censorship, and very loudly take back the public square. I'm Tim Thompson, and this is Our Watch.
Well, good evening, everybody. Good to see all of you. It is pretty cool to see so many beautiful faces. I love that. It's so good to see you. I'm glad to be here with you tonight. We've got an amazing, incredible guest with us, and so encouraged to have him out. But I just want to remind you what we're doing here on Wednesday nights, why we're gathering together, why we're putting this content out online, and that is that we want to very boldly take back the public square. Remember this about the founding of our nation. In fact, if you go back east and you look at the roads, and I haven't shared this with you in a while, so for those of you who have not heard this, this is a great thing to understand about our nation. If you look at the roads back east, they're a lot different than how they are here on the West Coast. On the West Coast, we got a lot of north, south, east, west. We jump on, the 15 north. It's just so, that's the way our minds think about roads. But when you get to the East Coast, it's very different. On the East Coast, you've got these roads that lead kind of all over, but what you'll find is all of them lead back to a central location. And the idea of that is it's like a spoke on a wheel. You have all these different things, but they all led back to one central location. What was that location? The church. That was the location. Why? Because there at the center of town was the church. The church was the public square. It was where people went to go and discuss the things going on in the nation. They wanted to find out from their pastor what the pastor thought about what was going on. What does the Bible say about these issues? And that was where people went for their public discourse, was the church. That was right there at the center of town. And what has happened? Well, we found over the last several years that the radical left has hijacked most of our media, and we don't know what to believe. So what we try to do here on a Wednesday night is get good, true, factual information into your hands, so that way you can know how to go out and be effective in the culture that God has placed you in. And that really, like I said, having that good factual information, we also want to know, what does God's word say about those things? So we're trying to get back to how this nation was founded. That is one of the purposes of our Wednesday nights. So tonight we're pleased to be able to bring you some good factual information. And so let me go ahead and introduce out our guest tonight. Our guest this evening launched an internal review of systems and procedures to identify areas in need of improvement, and is focused on creating and implementing an innovative paperless case filing tracking system that integrates the DA's office with partner agencies and the court to save taxpayer monies while ushering the DA's office into the 21st century. In addition to technological improvements, he has created the Crime Prevention Unit tasked with community outreach and preventing criminal behavior among our youth. Please welcome our guest this evening, Riverside County District Attorney Mike Hestrin.
Thank you. Hey, pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
It is a pleasure to have you on the program tonight. Earlier, I don't know if you heard, but we're going to have Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco out in a couple of weeks, and they were a little excited about that. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I know you think that's pretty cool too, because you actually have a good relationship with him. Kind of tell us about that relationship, if you would.
So first of all, I'll tell you the most important part. He's obviously a great sheriff, but he's a really great man, and that's the most important part. He and I are personal friends. We do things outside of work, so I know him, outside of just the professional realm. And we are very lucky in this county. We've got a sheriff that enforces the law. He does so fairly. He does so honestly, and I think that what you're seeing around the country is that we should count ourselves fortunate to have that. And yeah. I think I'm fortunate that he's my partner in terms of DA and sheriff. I can tell you that you look around other counties and the DA and the sheriff are fighting, for whatever reason, and that it's terrible to see that, and it's somewhat embarrassing. But who suffers is the people, because the sheriff and the DA work for the people, and if they can't get it together to do their job, it's the people that suffer.
Right. And now, you guys are friends. You do stuff outside of work. Is that common at all? I mean, we have 58 counties here in the state of California. Are there other DAs and sheriffs that go out and do stuff the way you guys do?
I don't know about that. I think a lot of DAs and sheriffs. I'm gonna try to be diplomatic here. I think a lot of DAs and sheriffs are politicians. Mm-hmm. And so, they get into power and they see the other person as maybe like a rival or something. And Chad Bianco and I, neither one of us consider ourselves politicians. We're I came up through the ranks, he came up through the ranks. I'm a prosecutor, he's a deputy sheriff, he was a deputy sheriff, he's a sheriff. And so we just want to serve the people that we're here to serve in the time that God put us here.
Amen. Well, we're happy for that. It's funny. I was out at Mar-a-Lago 2 weeks ago, and was being introduced kind of around, and I'm the pastor that got arrested last year. And so they were, oh, did you see this? Is Pastor Tim? He's the one that got arrested. So, oh, you're out of California? Oh, yeah. Have you met Mike Hestrin and Chad Bianco? Yes, I have. And you guys are rock stars. I mean, everybody across the nation knows you guys because of how things have been going the last couple of years. And, maybe Chad a little bit more than you as far as being vocal. But it's been very clear that the two of you, there's a good partnership.
Yeah.
And the people in Riverside County are blessed. And we know that is something that, because it's so good, because it creates such a good environment for us in this county, that we're going to see people on the radical left that want to destroy that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So, everything I just said, all the good things, for some people, that's reason enough to target, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. I want to play a really quick clip. This is Nancy Pelosi talking about an attitude of lawlessness. Take a look, and I want to see what you think.
The fact is that there is an attitude of lawlessness in our country that springs from I don't know where. Maybe you do.
It springs from I don't know where. Maybe you know. Let me ask you, DA. Oh, thank you, DA Hestrin. Do you know where it comes from?
As a matter of fact, I do know, and so does she. She's not being honest. No surprise to no one. They all know where it comes from because they did it on purpose. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't, oh gosh, all of a sudden there's an attitude of lawlessness that spread around the entire country. No, this was very deliberate, and they've done it systematically. And it started about 10 years ago, really in earnest, with the changes of the laws here in California. And we're about 7 years into this quote unquote progressive revolution, or whatever you want to call it, and it's not going well. It's a disaster. And all you have to do is look around at the cities, and now they're for the last few weeks and months, there's nothing to see here. There's no crisis, there's no problem. And now you can see that their polling that's not what their polling is telling them. And so now they're going to switch and they're going to say, oh, absolutely, we don't know how this started. So, you just have to be able to recognize the lies and call it what it is. Because, we've got to get back to the basics. Like you said in your opening, I really like one of the things you said. We've got to get back to the basics of how government is supposed to work.
Mm-hmm.
That's
right.
At the federal level for sure, but even at the local level. DAs, they enforce the law. They don't make the law. They don't suspend the law. They enforce the law. Sheriffs, the same thing. They enforce the law. So we've got to get back to those basics.
Right. Well, and part of it is we need to, as citizens, we need to understand how the law works in the first place. Yeah. Like you were telling me earlier that there's some people that don't even know what you do. And I've embarrassingly shared this about myself, and I wrote about it in my book that came out this year, that I sat across the desk from Ken Calvert in Washington, D.C., as a pastor, as a spiritual leader in the community who teaches people to pray for all those who are in authority, that we can live quiet and peaceful lives unto the Lord in all godliness and reverence, right? So the thing is, I've taught that, and yet there I was sitting across the table from Ken Calvert, and he asked me, Pastor, do you have any questions for me? And literally, I'm embarrassed to share this, but literally my question was, who are you and what do you do? No clue what this guy, and found out it was Congressman Ken Calvert, the congressman of the district I live in, and I'm telling everybody, pray for this guy, pray for people that are in authority that we can live, and I have no clue who they are. Yeah. And I have no clue what their prayer requests are, and shame on me for that, because I wasn't doing what I should do. And I think we as a society need to own part of this, that we don't even know what certain people, what they do. Some people think that you're out defending the people that are, and I guess that is, I guess you could easily deduct that because you look at what some of these, like George Gascon from LA, you look what they're doing, it almost does appear that way. But we need to study this republic and understand how it works and understand how government's supposed to flow. And right now, what we've been seeing is this top down. It really should be from the bottom up. And local elections, to me, in 2022, local elections are going to be huge, a massive part of what I'm going to be focused on because it's going to have drastic consequences if we don't do well in this next year. So Nancy Pelosi says this attitude of lawlessness, she doesn't know where it comes from. Well, like you said, she knows darn well where it came from. I want to share another quick video. This has to do with the San Francisco mayor and what she said. I believe she just said it yesterday. It was reported on today. Maybe she said it today. It was yesterday or today. Take a look.
All right, so Jamie, I want to get to this. The Daily Mail with this headline, and it speaks to what police officers are dealing with on the street. Brazen crime, open drug use, a spike in homelessness, and trashed streets is driving very tolerant San Francisco residents to say enough. Amid the crime spike, the city's very liberal Soros-backed district attorney will face a recall vote in June. And it's gotten so bad that San Francisco's liberal Democratic mayor had this to say yesterday. Let's watch together.
What I'm proposing today and what I will be proposing in the future will make a lot of people uncomfortable. And I don't care. We are past the point where what we see is even remotely acceptable. And it comes to an end when we take the steps to be more aggressive with law enforcement, more aggressive with the changes in our policies, and less tolerant of all the bull that has destroyed our city.
If you could just get a TV in front of her and play the news a year ago and the things that she did and what she implemented, I think it would be pretty embarrassing for her. But what's your take on what she's saying there?
So I have two thoughts. One is, obviously the mayor of San Francisco, she was all in favor of defunding the police when that was fashionable. And if you think about, so let me just focus on that 1 second, because I want to say something else about that clip. But, defunding the police, first of all, probably the dumbest political idea I've ever heard. Right? But it's so incredibly dangerous because police don't just respond to crime. When they patrol, they prevent crime. And just think about it common sense-wise. When you have a neighborhood and the police are patrolling, people in that neighborhood know that. Criminals, law-abiding citizens. And so they actually keep crime down from ever happening, not just responding. Obviously, when a crime happens and someone calls 911, then the police go out in response. But you can't forget that crime prevention aspect of what police do day in and day out, and just their presence. So all across the United States, police departments have slashed their budgets, and places like San Francisco, they've cut funding hundreds of millions of dollars. I think I read somewhere that Los Angeles has more than 500 vacancies for the LAPD. So, when you ask yourself, why are our neighborhoods spiraling out of control? Well, they don't have the police officers on the street that they did not long ago. So that's one thing. I think that obviously the mayor's being hypocritical to say that a year ago, and then now, the tide is changing. And that's the second thing I want to say. When you listen to that, you can grab a little bit of hope. It's been 7 long years for this experiment that's been foisted on the people of this country and this state. And I think when you see the mayor of San Francisco talk like that the end is coming to this experiment. I think you know it, they know it, and it's only a matter of time before it ends, because they're going to start getting political pressure to clean up their streets and make it safe for law-abiding citizens to walk down the street, to use the parks, to go to the grocery store, to take their kids to school, whatever. We all have a right to be safe in our communities. That's why we pay taxes. And they're going to figure that out. And so I think that there's a ray of hope in that. I know it's hypocritical, but I look at that and I say, if she is saying that, then there's a ray of hope for us.
Yeah. I try to not quickly dismiss people who think differently than me. I want to try to understand them, and I'm sure you do the same thing. You understand both sides of an argument. Yeah. So, what is it about their argument that was so appealing?
I think the argument of the progressives, it does have a certain appeal on the surface, because what do they talk about things like, hey, we want to reduce mass incarceration. Well, who would be in favor of mass incarceration? Nobody, right? It sounds terrible. So they're setting it up. We've got this huge problem. We incarcerate too many people. We want to, get people out of our prisons. And the progressives also talk about the expense that society pays to incarcerate people. And all those things are true. It's incredibly expensive to incarcerate someone. What they don't tell you, though, is that what's the true cost. When you take a prison population, now not everybody in prison has to be there for the rest of their life, but there's a certain group of people that are in prison that are dangerous to the public. And when you systematically empty the prisons and the jails, those people are on the streets, and they're a danger now to the citizenry, not just to those behind bars. And that's what you're seeing across this country, is that we've had a massive movement for the last 7 years of decriminalization and decarceration. So we've been lowering the consequences of crime, and then we've been emptying our jails. Those two things have been happening in tandem for the last 7 years. Certainly in California, it started in 2012, so almost 10 years here. And the effects are just now being felt by the public. And the public, they've had it. They're not going to take it much longer. And that's, again, so but to your question, there is a certain appeal on the surface. And I think that, 5, 6, 7 years ago, people say, well, we need to reform the system. Absolutely, we need to reform the system. The criminal justice system is a human system, and so it should always be up for reform. Only God's systems are perfect. So these are man-made systems. There's going to be flaws. There's going to be corruptions. We've got to fix those. But to fix them by just wholesale lowering the consequences is dangerous. So when you don't punish or you lower the consequences of crime, you invite more of it. And all you have to do is think about Proposition 47. Right. Proposition 47, one of the most insane things about it was that it said that someone could go and steal up to $950 worth of merchandise, and that would be a misdemeanor. So now, that was in 2014. Now look what's happened. We can't, Targets and Walmarts and CVS's, they can't stay open in our major cities. They're closing, they're leaving. So, you're really playing with fire when you do some of these things that society-wide. And then we're finding that out now.
Right. With issue, I don't want to get too much into issues of the border, but we do have an issue at our southern border. I don't think it's a shock to anybody here or anybody that's watching online. I think we all know that. But one of the massive problems about that, and it is lawlessness, and as Christians, we are people who love and appreciate law and order. So when there's lawlessness that's taking place, it's something that frustrates us, and it's a struggle to have a good positive attitude when there is lawlessness. But one of the massive problems we have with the lawlessness taking place there is an influx in illicit drugs. Yeah. With that, the fentanyl crisis, and I know that you've been a leader in this, in trying to combat that issue. Talk to us, if you would, about how big of an issue this is, because I think there's a lot of people who don't really understand how big this is.
It is.
And share with us what you're doing to try to combat this.
Yeah, so our southern border is a mess. You know that. It's lawless. And obviously, the southern border is controlled by the criminal cartels, the Mexican cartels. And I was out speaking, I want to say this. There was a man in the audience, and I said that drugs are pouring across the southern border. And of course, he took offense as if I was, insulting Mexico or the Mexican people. And I said, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's criminal organizations in Mexico. And, he said, well, you shouldn't say that. And I said, well, I'm going to tell the truth. And the truth is that those drugs are pouring across the southern border. in amounts that are just truly staggering now. So if you don't know what fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. It's mass-produced in China, and it's then smuggled into Mexico or other South American ports, and then smuggled across the southern border. It comes into Riverside County, San Diego County, and then gets dispersed to the rest of the country. But fentanyl is so lethal that just a couple of grains of sand amount of it is lethal to the human body. 2 milligrams is lethal to the human body. There's 5,000 milligrams in a teaspoon. And we are collecting in Riverside, city of Riverside, the police seized 21 kilos the other day. So if you think about, it's almost, if you start doing the math, you think that's enough to kill 50 million people, right? So this is not a drug like we've ever seen before, and it's completely changed the nature of the drug trade for law enforcement. First of all, law enforcement officers can't just seize this stuff. They have to get into hazmat suits because they've died from the fumes. That's how toxic it is. So the number of deaths because of fentanyl have skyrocketed across the state and in Riverside County, like every other county. Just to give you a sense of this, in 2016, we had 2 fentanyl-related deaths. Every year since then, it doubled. In 2020, we had 227 fentanyl poisonings. That's what I call them, poisonings. And this year, 2021, we're going to have more than 500. And so, it keeps doubling every year. And that's because this incredibly toxic substance is being spread across our communities. And it's finding its way into counterfeit pills. Like I have kids, I'm terrified for them. You have to tell your kids, your nieces, your nephews, anyone who you love, you cannot take a single pill that you didn't get from your doctor. It's going to have fentanyl in it. So that's what we're facing. I hate to, we could spend the whole time on that, but it is lawlessness. And it is, back to what Nancy Pelosi said, there seems to be this lawlessness. Yeah,
I don't know where it's coming from.
It's been spreading. It's been spreading for a long time, and it's been spreading a poison across our communities. And I have to tell you, I have to bring this down to a human level because I just gave you some statistics. I said more than 500 people are going to die this year. We're on pace to have more than 500 fentanyl deaths. But almost every time that I'm out, someone stops me and says, I want to tell you about my son or my daughter who I lost because of this poison. And so I get angry. It's my job to do the best I can to protect this community, and I get angry that the feds aren't stopping it. Although I have to say that the hardworking men and women of the Border Patrol, they're doing everything they can. They're outmanned, but we've got to do something different. It's not working.
Right. You're doing something different though,
yes.
In how you're approaching it, and. Men like Matt Capilouto, who we've had on the program here before, appreciates your new approach. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So because of the toxicity that I just explained about fentanyl, and I said a minute ago, it changed the nature of drug dealing. So what we have done in Riverside County, and we're basically the first, and we have begun to charge drug dealers with murder when they kill someone that they furnished this drug to. And I don't take pleasure in sending anyone to prison for life, but at some point, when you know that you're peddling a poison and you know it kills people, and yet you continue to do so, then you have to be accountable for that. And that's what we've said. So we currently have in Riverside County 10 pending murder cases, fentanyl murder cases. And I can tell you that my colleagues, excluding San Francisco and LA, they all want to do this now. This approach is spreading, and so this is going to be the new norm in California. We're going to go after fentanyl dealers.
Good. There's an aspect. Obviously, this affects us all. Everything that you're doing, and a district attorney that's not doing what you're doing really has a drastic effect on its community. It's affecting the men and women in blue, in a big way. And I want to share just another clip with you and see your take on this, because you're you're a law enforcement. You're a head law enforcement person. I don't think people realize that about the DA. Right. But you're one of our top law enforcement officers in the state. So let's watch this and let's talk about that.
Okay.
I mean, just a year ago, you have San Francisco and Los Angeles and Oakland in California talk about defunding the police. We saw how that experiment went. We're down over 700 officers. I'm in San Francisco monthly, and I talk to my counterparts up there, and they're going through the same thing. Crime is crazy. Now they're scrambling. And the thing about politicians is they don't want to admit when their policies are failures, just like the mayors up there, the city council members, and also our George Gascon and the district attorney in San Francisco. They don't want to admit they failed. Their policies failed, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So let's roll back the Wayback Machine, and I like the way you said it. Whoa, what a difference a year makes. This was July of 2020. Mayor London Breed, the same woman now who's cussing and carrying on because crime is so bad and she's got to fix it. She said that she was going to eliminate or reallocate $120 million in funding to be redirected from law enforcement agencies to instead be spent on addressing disparities in other communities. So now, a year later, we have this. We have the reality of what that looks like. And when you turn back time, what does that mean? Detective, we lost people that you can't necessarily replace from the ranks. They're not going to come back just because she decides to spend more money now.
No. In fact, we are seeing it's harder and harder to recruit people. I had a friend that had 23 years on. He's still 5 years away from collecting his pension, and he retired. He said, I'll wait 5 years to collect my pension. And that's what we're seeing. But when you have people like George Gascon and his policies, just last week at a press conference, he said the criminal justice system failed the suspect that killed Jacqueline Avant, meaning if that suspect would have had more programs available to him when he was arrested in his prior arrest, that this could have been avoided. That's delusional. And there's no type of programs to change evil people like the Richard Ramirez's, the Jeffrey Dahmers. When people commit violent acts like that, they need to be incarcerated. And what we're seeing is a revolving door. It's like a merry-go-round here in Los Angeles and in San Francisco.
Yeah. So talk about that, if you would. So your relationship with Sheriff Bianco, obviously being a good relationship, that's good for everybody in his downline.
Yes.
Because what we're hearing from places like that detective is from Los Angeles, I believe. They're having a huge issue. They can't recruit enough officers.
Yeah. So let me, I started out this interview by saying how lucky we are, how lucky I feel to live in Riverside County, and how lucky I think we are to have a sheriff like Chad Bianco. But I have to give credit to our Board of Supervisors. I don't always agree with everything that they do and say, but they didn't defund the police here. They didn't cut the sheriff. And so, we've been sort of like on a little island here in Riverside County, and all around us has been all this destruction, and you can see the difference. And so, we don't have these same problems. I'll tell you, at my office, and I know at the Sheriff's Department, we're hiring. And, we're getting all kinds of people coming from LA, right. I mean, I've probably hired a dozen LA DAs, people with 10 years of experience prosecuting cases, and they've come, they're moving their families here. They say, I can't live there anymore. I don't want to work for that DA. And so, and what I say is, you know what, I feel bad for LA, but the people of Riverside County benefit. So
Right.
we're hiring and we're expanding to meet the challenges, and I know the sheriff's doing the same thing.
Right.
So, we're sort of lucky. Now, what I will say is to have that kind of chaos all around us is unsettling, and it is causing crime to go up in our county as well, because crime doesn't respect the county line. So it does bleed over, for sure.
Yeah, there's a difference, though, when they commit those crimes in Riverside County.
Yes.
And they're caught. There's a difference in what happens to them.
Big difference.
Big difference.
Big difference.
Explain, so just for the people that don't understand how this works, like my son-in-law is a police officer. He's so grateful that you're the DA. So why is it that he's so grateful? How does this work? They arrest somebody, explain to everybody, because we need to understand why it's so important. When George Soros spends hundreds of thousands of dollars to remove you, to get you gone and put somebody else, why is he trying to do that? What's the relationship?
Sure. So the progressive experiment that's been done on you, the people, started with changing the laws. And so they swept in a bunch of laws that they called criminal justice reform, which were all designed to lower the consequences for crime. But there's a second phase, and that is, let's get rid of those who enforce the law and replace them with people who campaign on refusing to enforce the law. So there's two phases to what they're trying to do. Now, they have weakened the laws in California, and I have to live with those changes, right? I don't get to make the law. So for example, I have to live with Proposition 47. So when someone goes into a store and steals $900 worth of merchandise, if a police officer arrests them at all, if they even call the police anymore, we can only charge them with a misdemeanor. So I'm bound by that. But where the difference is that I'm going to enforce the law to the letter. And if you steal $1,000 worth of merchandise in Riverside County, you're getting a felony. If there's a crime that calls for prison, my deputy DAs push for prison. For violent crimes, for example. We all know in Riverside County that when someone commits a violent crime, we go into court and we ask the judge to hold them, in custody, or set up a bail high enough that's going to keep them in custody. Because why? Because we want to make sure that they're not victimizing more people. So, the reason why I think your son-in-law prefers me as the DA is because, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but here at least we're going to try to do everything we can to enforce the law and to hold people accountable. Now, does that mean that there are times when the laws don't let us, and it's frustrating, but our attitude at our office, and this is from me all the way on down, is that we're going to enforce the law and hold people accountable, and I think that makes the difference right there.
Yeah, for a police officer, they make the arrest, they bring them to jail, and then they see him out there the very next day.
Yeah.
That's got to be frustrating. And it's got to get the police officers to get to the point where they just go, you know what, I'm not even going to arrest them.
It is. It's demoralizing for police officers. And I know a lot of, police officers, they probably go through that thought process where they say, what's the point of arresting someone who's going to be out before I'm done doing the paperwork? And that's where we are as a state, unfortunately.
How do we turn that around as a state? I mean, we got it good here in Riverside County, but as a state, because there's people that watch this that aren't necessarily from here local. We got people actually all over the United States that watch it. So how do they turn this around for them in their area?
So I would say a couple of things. One, George Gascon and some of these pretty outrageous policies, there's actually been a silver lining to it, and that is it's really focused people on what a DA does. I think when crime rates are low and people feel safe, a lot of people maybe, I don't want to say, forget, but they maybe take for granted, the DA and the sheriff, or just think, well, it's not that important. They focus maybe on national races. But a community has got to focus on their DA and their sheriff, because those are your two top law enforcement officers and officials. And, if you have a bad sheriff or a bad DA or someone who's just not going to enforce the law, then, like I said at the beginning, you're going to be the ones to suffer. So focus on that. Get your neighbors to focus on that. Have a word-of-mouth campaign about what you want for your communities. And I always say I work for you all. I'm out in the community. I know what the people of Riverside County want, and I'm fairly confident that I reflect that. And obviously they're going to let me know. At every election we have every 4 years, and the people get to let me know, if they want me to go back and keep doing the job I'm doing. But focus, first of all, on that. The second thing I would say is, it's really time to start pushing back on some of these terrible laws. It's time to get organized. It's time to not just play defense, but put initiatives on the ballot. School choice initiatives. I think those are great things. That's democracy in action. And if the people don't like the laws, they can change the laws.
Right. No, you make a great point because we could sit around and complain all day long, and what good does that do? Unless we actually get active and do something about it, we really have no right to complain. We really should be engaged in these things. And like I said, I'm not trying to, say, oh, well, you should do that because I'm doing it. I wasn't doing it either, and that's where I try to be very transparent in that and say, look, I wasn't, as a pastor, as a spiritual leader, I had no clue who my representative was. And, that's not a good thing. But that's something that can change. And you can attest to this, that I know what your prayer requests are. Because I ask, how can I be praying for you? And I do that with everybody that's elected that will allow me to do it. Not everybody cares that I want to pray for them. You happen to care about that. But not everybody does. But the ones who do and they want me to be praying for them, I know what their prayer requests are. I say that because all of us can do something. All of us can sign the petition to get school, that school choice initiative on there. That's a huge thing. I've been talking about what's going on with the schools for a long time, and I feel so bad. I know so many good teachers that are struggling right now because of the laws that are being created, and it's putting them in a position where they could lose their job, or they, if they don't say something that's totally against their own conscience, there's something against their belief, they could end up being sued. And so this is because of laws that are put on there. So we need to definitely push back on this, get some good laws passed, but that's going to take us being engaged and know what's going on. And I really hope that we're going to see something huge in 2022. Now, Virginia, and we just saw what took place in Virginia. I think Virginia is a great foreshadowing of what is to come. Because I think parents are realizing there's too many bad laws that have been written. There's too many bad things going on. And parents are awake to this. And what do we want as parents? We want our rights as parents. We want to make sure our kids are safe. And so when we're looking at 2022, school boards and the sheriff and the DA, those are going to be huge for us. Those are going to be the things that really matter. Everybody always talks about the president who's running for this, these national offices, but politics is local. And if we can't fix what's going on locally, why are we even trying to worry about the rest of the nation? We don't even know what's going on in our own backyard. So this can be huge. Now, if you would also explain to us, why is it that the DA and the sheriff are so important as far as the state? Because we look at Gavin Newsom, and I know that most of the people in this room do not. There might be some weirdos in here, I don't know, but I think most of you don't like the type of power he's been exercising over this state. But the sheriff and the DA bring a check and balance to that. Can you explain that for us?
So in our system, in our state system, the sheriff and DA are what are called constitutional officers. And so what that means is we are not appointed by any board. So I'm not appointed by the Board of Supervisors. And though I respect them and they set my budget, I don't work for them. And I'm respectful about that. I have a good relationship with the board, but I don't work for them. I also don't work for the governor. The governor can't pick up the phone and say, hey, Mr. DA, I want you to file these cases. So my ethics don't allow me to do that. The prosecutorial ethics say that I have to believe that I'm doing justice. And so that's a key component, and it serves, Pastor's right, it serves as a check and a balance on power. So the governor calls me and said, hey, I want you to prosecute these cases. I say, Governor, respectfully, I don't work for you. I'm gonna do what's right for the people of Riverside County. And keep in mind, we've got 58 elected DAs across the state. So it does serve as a real check and balance on the laws and how things are prosecuted. And it's the precise reason why George Soros wants to get his own brand of prosecutors into all these offices. It's the exact reason why he's doing that, because it is a real power at the local level. And so remember that. And just to piggyback on what was said a minute ago, remember that we self-govern ourselves. That's what distinguishes us as Americans. And I really believe that we self-govern. If we don't self-govern ourselves, then what's the point of any of it? We govern ourselves, and I think that we've forgotten that a little bit in this country. I think we've been lulled to sleep by the technology and by the by the talking heads on TV. Let's remember that we govern ourselves.
Yeah, amen to that. So you're coming into an election season, and you've had some great successes. Would you share some of those with us, some of the things that you're most proud of?
Yeah, the DA's office, historically, you had a really great DA's office. When I was, keep in mind, I came up through the ranks. I started here in 1997, prosecuting misdemeanor cases and worked my way up and learned how to do this job and learned how to be a prosecutor. And it's been the greatest honor of my life to serve in this role. And then being the elected DA, it's just been a great honor to serve you all. Since I've been the elected DA, we've done a lot of things. The first thing I had to do was get my office, kind of back focused on doing the job. There had been just a lot of problems in the office with my predecessor, and I'm not here to disparage any of my predecessors, but we sort of lost focus. I'll just say it like that. So we had to get everybody back working together, and we've done that. My offices. We're united. It doesn't mean 100%. We're an office of 800 people, but we're united. We're working for the people of this county. We have great prosecutors. They enforce the law. They're tough. They're good litigators. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of building a just Class A, top-of-the-line DA's office that's going to serve you. And so that's probably what I'm most proud of. I think beyond that, we've taken a hard line against child predators. We kind of lead the state. We created a task force called the Riverside County Child Exploitation Team, and we are.
How big of a problem is that?
It's a huge problem, and we go after pedophiles, and we don't cut them any slack. We don't say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you were." Mistreated as a child. We don't do any of that. If they are preying upon our children, they're gone. And so we take a really hard line, and it's something I'm proud of, and I make no apologies to anyone for that. And then beyond that, the fentanyl issue, and we also, as you said in your opening, or your introduction. We've also, something I'm really proud of is we reach out to the community to try to help our youth that have sort of gone astray. And I think that's important too. I am a tough on crime DA, and I'm proud of that. But at the same time that we do that, I've sent DAs into every single one of the school districts to work with teachers. For example, kids who are skipping class. Well, that's a red flag that there's other problems going on. And so we work with those kids, we work with the school counselors, and we plug them into services at a very young age. And I think that's paying dividends. I think it really is. If you can get someone who's just starting to go off track and put them, gently put them back on track, not by locking them up, not by anything like that, but, sometimes it's just a matter of figuring out that there's problems at home. And so I'm proud of that. That's our crime prevention unit. And that's been nationally recognized as well. So I'm really proud of those things.
If you would just elaborate a little bit more on the sexual predators task force that you put together, some of the things that you do, some of the things you found. There's been some innovative approaches to this.
So what we did, we created a task force, and again, they're called Riverside County Child Exploitation Team, and it's a countywide task force. They come together. They really focus on internet crimes against children. That's the new thing. So you remember when I was a kid, my parents told me, don't take candy from a stranger. Be careful of people in vans and things. This was what they told us when we were kids, right? And well, the predators aren't in vans anymore. They're sitting behind a keyboard. And unfortunately, we as a society have given them access to our children in their rooms with a device. And that we've got to remedy that. But what we're doing is we track online predators. So there's a bunch of ways that we do it. I can't tell you all the ways we do it. But I've got a team of investigators that are patrolling cyberspace, so to speak. They're out there looking. So there's peer-to-peer networks, and so people that traffic in child pornography, they trade these images. And there's certain networks that do that. And so we're on those networks monitoring them. So when we find them, we go and arrest them. And what we've done is a couple of innovative things. We got what's called a electronic sniffing dog, specially trained canine, that can sniff out. So like a hard drive is made of certain material that's in the chip, and it gives off a scent, a certain scent profile. Now a dog can pick it up like that. So they're trained to alert on that. So we'll go into someone, we'll find them on the internet and they're trading child pornography. So we'll get a warrant, we'll go into that house, and of course they'll deny it, or they'll say, oh, I was just a one-time thing. And we'll get a warrant and we'll search that house and we'll bring that dog in. And underneath a floorboard or behind a wall, the dog will alert, and there will be a hard drive, a separate hard drive, full of terrible images of basically children being raped. That's what it is. And so we then go back and we try to identify all those children. And many of the people that we've identified from this kind of investigation are now doing life in prison because we've actually found their victims and we sent them to prison. So, 10 years ago, we didn't do any of this. We caught someone with pornography and we prosecuted them just for that. What we're doing now is really a full expansive. So our approach is this: if someone's got child pornography, they're a child predator, and we're going to find out. We're not going to stop. We're going to find out who you victimized, and we're going to prosecute you for that.
Amen. I don't know if you have a statistic on this or just an opinion you want to share, but what would you say the recidivism rate is for a person who is a child predator?
Oh gosh, approaching 100%. I mean, it's I'm sure that on the very minor end of this crime, there's people that aren't true predators. But for those who are true predators, they can't stop. They can't stop. They can't be rehabilitated. They have to be locked up and kept away from society. And again, I know that sounds harsh, but that is the reality. That is the reality.
Doesn't sound harsh to me. That actually sounds like you're giving them a break. I say castrate them or kill them.
So they can't be rehabilitated. So when they are after children, they see children in a sexual way, they've got to be removed from society, period.
Right. Well, I'm glad that that's the approach that you take. I wanted to bring that up because I know a lot of people have said that, like, well, what about rehabilitation? And I've never met a law enforcement agent ever in my life that said, oh yeah, that's a good idea, let's try it. Everyone I've talked to has said it's near 100% recidivism rate.
Yeah.
So why would we take a chance in letting them back out into society when we have children that we have to protect? It doesn't make any sense. But anyways, I'm glad that you take that approach. So it is going to be an election year for you. How can this group and those that are watching online, how can they help you out in your campaign?
If you're so inclined, you can go to Mike Hestrin for DA.com. And go on there. There's ways that you can get involved. It's like every other campaign. My very first campaign in 2014, my team, we knocked on 100,000 doors in Riverside County. And obviously I didn't knock on all those doors, but it was a lot of work. It was more than a year of every weekend, my wife is here in the front row with my 5-year-old son. But she would joke that was the only time we got to spend together was when we walk in precincts and knocking on doors. So, those were some fun times. But we probably won't knock on that many doors this time. But if you want to get involved, we're going to have events. We're going to have community events where we get together, meet the candidate, and then we'll go knock on some doors and things like that. So we're going to be doing that after the first of the year. So if you want to get involved in some way, or you want bumper stickers or T-shirts or anything like that, please get a hold of me and we'll make sure that happens.
And it also, I'll just be bold to ask it, is there a way they can contribute financially?
Yes, there's a button there as well. You can contribute.
Listen, you can't win an election without money. It's that simple. You gotta have money. Soros is more than willing to give it.
Yeah.
And so we need to be, if we care about our community, we care about our children. What do we want? Some DA that's going to go, oh, you molested a child? We'll see you back out on the street tomorrow. We don't want that for our community. We need to make sure that we keep you in office. It's going to be huge for us, and we are blessed to live in this county because of you and the relationship you have with Chad Bianco. It's just an incredible dynamic duo you guys have going on there. So I really, really want to recommend that you guys do go to, what's that website address again, just so that way everybody knows?
Mike Hestrin for DA.com.
All right, MikeHestrinforDA.com. Go to that, get connected. We are going to be doing trainings here as we get into election season, trainings on how to walk precincts, how to knock on doors, that kind of stuff. So once we get you trained, you want to go walk precincts for Mr. Hestrin, we'd be happy to have you do that. And again, if you can help contribute financially to what he's got going on, that would be huge as well. But you have time to meet people afterwards?
Absolutely,
okay.
yeah. I'll stick around, and if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to talk with you a little bit.
Well, I want to thank you for coming out
Thanks
again.
for having me.
Really
Pleasure.
appreciate it. I want to remind you guys, you're getting a standing ovation now.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. That's nice.
All right, well, you are not going to want to miss in a couple of weeks. Don't forget, January 5th, we're going to have Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco is going to be here. You're not going to want to miss that. But I hope you guys have, for those of you that don't attend church here, because I know several of you don't, we're taking a break. So we're not going to be here next Wednesday or the following Wednesday. I want to wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas. Don't forget the reason for this season. It is Jesus Christ and Him alone. Amen? God bless you. We'll see you.
That was great.
All right.